The accumulation phase is made up of two key components. The first one is saving the right percentage, not an amount, of your income. The second one, though, is building that tax diversification. That is easy to do as long as you have a plan and you've got the right advice. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com or call us at 800-928-4001. Get signed up for your next steps meeting. In 90 minutes, we'll give you a complimentary time where we sit down, show you things you want to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing. Again, that's 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Hey, welcome back to Your Retirement Playbook. I'm your host, Joe Clark. Happy to have you along. We are focused this week on the three phases of finance in a deteriorating market. We have talked about character trust, the liking, the relatability, the happiness with dealing with a certain person. And you really want to like who you're working with. I get that very much. But we're also dealing with the competency portion. And remember, when we talk about a fiduciary, and I don't mean this offensively at all, but the majority, we all have fiduciaries, but the majority of us are our own fiduciary. Over 90% of the state of Indiana, it's 90% nationwide, do not work with registered investment advisors. They work with brokers, people who buy and sell things, or do it on their own, one or the other. In the state of Indiana, 92% of us do it on our own. So you are likely your own fiduciary. So you've got character trust in yourself. I don't know many people who don't trust themselves, right? But it's that competency trust. How do you know that you know? How does that fit in? The double curse of knowledge is probably the greatest gift I got at Purdue that became very, very aware to me. I don't know what I don't know, but I also don't know what you don't know. And having 7 years, 14 semesters to start over, to learn that just because I'd learned it once didn't mean the next class got it, helped me a tremendous amount. But just understanding that them not knowing and me not knowing what they didn't know really helped us build a stronger financial planning department at the Financial Enhancement Group. And for that, I will always be thankful to Purdue University. So I asked 3 of our associate advisors questions about the 3 phases of finance in a deteriorating market. And the 3 phases of finance are accumulation, preservation, and distribution. 3 very, very, very different periods of time. People, in my opinion and my experience, tend to look at their investment statements the same, regardless of which phase of finance they're in. How much do I have? Second question is, how am I doing? Right? And when people say that, from an investment side, they tend to mean, how am I doing relative to the market, which is not usually a good sampling of what they should be looking at. Or how am I doing compared to somebody else my age and my income level, which again is immaterial. You are not them. Every financial decision that you make requires a decision, just what I said. And you know, if you've watched this show for a long time, I love the Cheesecake Factory menu analogy. It is full of 250 options. Everybody loves choices. We just hate making decisions, right? And that's really what it comes down to. With every dollar that you have that comes in, you've got to make a hard decision as to whether or not to spend that today and enjoy it today, right? Or whether you're going to put it away and save it for the future, where you want the biggest impact that you can possibly get, but you're making a decision to delay gratification. A guy named Zig Ziglar years ago said everybody pays a price. Everybody pays a price. You either pay the price of discipline today, or in his Texas accent, the price of regret later on. Love Zig Ziglar. He was a great guy. Passed away just a few years ago. But the concept is very, very simple. When you look at that Cheesecake Factory menu, you're making a choice in terms of looking at all of those things that are on there. And you may have narrowed it down to 3 or 4 or 15 or even 1, but then the waiter walks over and now you have to make the actual decision. And that's really, really, really what happens inside of the finance world. So in accumulation, remember, your 2 focuses were tax planning, building tax diversification along the way, and the second one was making sure that you're saving the right percentage of your money. The sooner you start, the younger you are, because of compound interest, the less you need to save percentage-wise. Then you move into preservation, and this is where life gets to be really, really ugly. I've done this for a long time, so I'm going to mention a name, Peter Lynch, that some of you have probably never even heard of. But Peter Lynch was a legend at Fidelity, and and people don't understand how average returns work. But Fidelity used to average present in the late 90s that this Fidelity fund had averaged over 10% a year. It was actually a lot higher than that, but I'm just going to use that number just to give you an illustration. Peter Lynch apparently was a very ethical guy, wrote a book, Lynch on Lynch, and talked about some of the mishappenings with these statements. The only way you're ever going to get an average return, ladies and gentlemen, is to be there beginning, middle, and end, right? So when a market does this, right, through 2008, through a pandemic, through whatever we're having right now, you have to be willing to hold the course if you're going to talk about an average return. Now, please don't take that as me telling you that you should hold the course. That's not what I'm saying at all, right? But what I'm saying is if you're going to talk about or rely upon average rates of return, then you've got to understand where we are in each of these periods of time, and you've got to be willing to hold out through the beginning, through the middle, and through the end if you're going to be able to get that return or be able to utilize it. So in Lynch's in the Fidelity ads, Peter Lynch averaged, and it was a lot more than 10%, double that plus, over 25-year period of time. And people are going, that's incredible. And so, here's the point. Lynch writes a book that essentially said over half his investors lost money. Now, that's kind of interesting. How can you have an average return that was well over that number? I don't even want to put it up there because it's scary. Well over that number. How can you have an average return that did that and over half your investors lose money? Well, it's because you have to be there beginning, middle, and end in order to have the average return. And what happened invariably is when he had these significant returns, people would put more money in here. And even though you talk about an average return and you know you have to be there beginning, middle, and end, people would pull money out here. So when you pull money out when it's down, it doesn't matter what the average return is. It doesn't get you there. It doesn't have the capacity to be able to grow. And people end up dying in that preservation stage. This, by the way, is Wall Street's favorite, is the preservation stage. It doesn't matter what you add this year, they'll take the new contributions, but it's building off that baby that you've already got, and they don't have to worry about distributions. You, however, have to focus on that average return. So Michael Matchett is one of our advisors down in the Fisher's office. And Michael, I asked the question because they're in that middle stage. His wife's a hospital administrator. What are the questions that you're getting in terms of the preservation stage? And the first one is, how soon can I retire? It's like, Mike, I hope you're not trying to tell me anything here. How soon can I retire? It's a great question. When can I separate from the workforce? And obviously, life expectancy comes into a big play in that. The longer you work, by definition, even if you live to be 150, the longer you work, the shorter your working life expectancy will be. Just because you have less years, just because you worked a year longer. We don't know how long we're going to be here. So I think you have to adopt a different attitude about life. I've always said, and I will always say, that retirement or separation from work, or what I like to call your life after work, is not a function of age. It is purely a function of money. And that money is broken into a couple different areas. It's broken into your budget, and it's broken into your desire at the end to what to leave behind, if you will. So from a budget side, how much money does it take to maintain your standard of living? How much do you have to be able to get to that next stage, if you will, of what it takes to manage that standard of living? We've talked about fixed and social expenses a lot. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, go to yourlifeafterwork.com or Your Retirement Playbook. You can find information on the retirement budget. The second question is, when should you take Social Security? Remember, Social Security, this is one of those silo questions that people like to ask. we look at Social Security as a singular decision. It's kind of like separating from work. When can I do it? A singular decision. How much should I put in my 401k? A singular decision. You need to look at it as an entire farm operation, not a silo, and think about all this together. And it's very, very tempting to take Social Security early, but I really recommend you understand the tax implications of doing that. That's where you deal with an advisor that understands the combination of how to do some of these strategies, how to bring that whole farm operation together so that you can make the right decision. This is a one-time opportunity. Do not get it wrong, right? I mean, Social Security is huge in the balance. 3, what and should I are we doing about inflation? That is a critical thing, right? I've often said on the show that if people could take money and hide it in a mattress and get the same average return that we got in the marketplace, much of the money would stay inside of the mattress. But we all know that that's not the case. Inflation is real. It's not transitory. It is real. And we're going to have this pressure for an extended period of time, in my opinion, especially on services, maybe not so much on goods. But inflation is one of those things that cost more and more money. The older we get, the more we tend to spend on services, the less we tend to spend on goods. I think inflation is really pitted against us as people that are aging in the workforce and heading into that retirement period of time. We've got to make sure that our money has the ability to grow and not just at interest rates or inflation rates. So you'll hear the word real and nominal. Nominal is a return that you earned. Real is what you get less the inflation rate. So if you earned 3 but inflation is 5, you had a negative 2%. Your purchasing power is declining every year. That is not a good trend, and your trend can be your friend. In this case, it would be your enemy. Do I need to look longer? Is my plan falling apart? There's an interesting commercial that's on the Golf Channel right now, and watching some of the tournaments where the guy said, hey, I thought I was going to have to work a few more years, and she says, no, it's only about 6 more months. I think that's jumping the gun, folks. In 2008 and 2009, I watched people change their standard of living that really, really didn't have to. I tend to look at it as a 3-year focus. So if you run diversification properly in terms of your portfolio, if you pay attention to your form of a risk barometer that we have at the Financial Enhancement Group, and you make decisions correctly, not erratically and not fear or greed based, I don't think you need to make major changes yet. You need to be on attention, but not major changes yet. Do not forget the impact of inflation, and don't get Social Security wrong. Do call us, 800-928-4001.